when you think about everything you've done in your life that was worth bragging about or talking about, there was this fear and this worry and this stress that you had to run toward, right? You had to say, okay, I'm going to tackle this head on. And it wasn't easy and it was challenging and you had to walk toward that. And it was painful at times, but it also then you, on the other side of that worry and stress and challenges, that growth occurred, right? That's the only way we can grow.
Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Overstock Dixie. You can go like and follow their Instagram. There's new items that pop up on there every day, multiple times a day. Anything from furniture to tools, electronics, pretty much anything you're looking for. Hey guys, welcome back to the Derek Legg Podcast. We are back in the vault again today. I've got a special guest for me, someone I haven't known for a super long time, but I've followed a lot of what he's done. He's one of my personal coaches in real estate, specifically short term, but he's had a background in all real estate. So this is Shawn Moore. How's it going, Shawn?
Awesome, Derek. So excited to be here.
Yeah, I think I'm extremely lucky to have you so close to me.
It's awesome. I know we're in town for another conference we're speaking at, and so super excited to be joining you in the vault.
Yeah, dude. I'm grateful you're here. I think about the Vodacy group that you started. You're the founder of Vodacy. We've had a guest in here before, Amy Stevens. She's who kind of got me introduced to it and how I signed up. And I think of you guys are like nationwide, right? And so I'm like, man, I'm kind of spoiled that you're just 3 hours away from me.
Right. It's awesome. It's fun to be down here.
Well, and you guys have a short-term rental in St. George, correct?
Yes, we do. You and Dave. The first one I bought.
Is it really?
Yeah. Well, one of the first one that I intentionally built and bought. Yeah, I guess.
And so it's cool because every time a lot of the time when you guys are kind of bringing up a property just to give an example or whatnot, it's typically in St. George. And so I'm like, cool, this is like the market I live in.
Right in my backyard, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I've been trying to get into more real estate, whether that's long-term, short-term, whatever it is. And I just found Amy at the right time. Yeah. My wife and I were kind of looking at something to jump into in education. Like we talked about before we got on, I'm a 2 feet in guy. Yeah. I'm a burn the boats. Yeah. And I was really looking for that opportunity, but really the knowledge is what I was craving because I didn't know a lot. Mm-hmm. And with running businesses and having failed businesses and successful businesses, it's all about the education for me. What can I learn before I go dump $200K into something, right?
Yeah.
So give me a little bit of background on you, but I really want to jump into Vodacy and start hitting that a lot because I get a lot of questions about it personally and through the podcast. So I'll let you run.
Awesome. Yeah. So background on me, I've been a full-time real estate investor for 22 years. So been up and down a lot of different markets, been through a number of different crashes and seen some ups and downs along the way, lots of different asset classes. For us, since about 2015, we really started getting into short-term rentals as a viable asset class to build a portfolio, create cash flow, all those great things that we love about real estate. And so at the time I never had the idea that I was ever going to coach anybody. Like that was never a goal for me. For us, we were just investors and trying to build a better life for ourselves, build lifestyle, financial freedom for myself and my family. And as we started having success, a lot of people start reaching out and saying, hey, what are you guys doing? Can you help me? Can you help me here? And we got invited to go speak on other people's platforms. And I went and spoke at a couple live events and started sharing what we were doing and sharing my email and saying, hey, if you have any questions or help, let me know. Well, a couple of months go by and people were then saying, hey, this worked. This is, here's what I did. I listened to what you said. And I realized at that point how much I enjoyed actually coaching as well. And that's what led us into Vodacy. Back in 2017, I started putting together a coaching platform that could help investors get into a game that is a little misunderstood, right? A lot of people know that short-term rentals are kind of the shiny object of real estate the last few years. If you had one the last couple of years, it was like having toilet paper during COVID, you were making money. That's not the case with short-term rentals long-term though, right? You really have to understand it as an asset class. You have to understand what you're diving into. And as an investor who understands that and understands that not every property makes money, it's not always as easy as you think. It a lot of times takes longer and more money than you think. You want people walking into something with their eyes wide open. Like you mentioned, I'm jumping 2 feet into the deep end, and it's why you're successful. It's why you move forward. And a lot of people don't have that in them to do that. But sometimes when we do that, our back is pinned against the wall saying, oh crap, maybe I didn't know what I was doing. And so I love working with people with that, like, okay, I'm taking action, right? I'm running as fast as I can to make my dreams and goals become a reality. But also I like people walking into it with their eyes wide open. I had a lot of fun and continue to have a lot of fun at Vodacy, helping other investors, not just ourselves. We're still in the game. We're buying properties all the time. I just made 3 offers yesterday. So we're in the game, but I think I get more excited when our members at Vodacy and our mentorship program buy properties more than I like to buy properties now. It's a really fun process for us.
Yes, we have that in common, because the podcast, that's what it is for me. Like, I'm out there just trying to help people through stuff, right?
Right.
Be able to connect to people.
Yeah.
And then with you, it's like that teaching aspect of it is where your love comes from. And you can tell. So when I first joined, I talked to Amy, and I think I signed up like the next day.
Yeah.
So I was in.
Yeah.
I got in, and it was maybe within a month, you guys did a live event in Northern Utah. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I'm in. I need to go learn. And as soon as I got up there, you came out on the little stage, and I thought, dude, I want to learn from this guy, because not only did you have the experience, and that was clear, right. You had the passion of like actually wanting to help people.
Right.
And not only, and I'm not sitting here trying to float your boat. I'm just trying to give context, right? Not only from the experience of people, how they talked about you, but I could just tell. And I sat front row, right, front and center, wanted to learn everything I could. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to learn from someone, I want the experience, I want the knowledge, I want the background that you have. And I mean, it's helped us. Amanda and I purchased a property in October. It's taken a little longer. It's ended up being a full rehab, but we're ready right now. Everything is, beds are all made, pictures are all hung. We got all of our photos done, and we're kind of just waiting on the county, but we should be live in the next 30 days or so.
And it's exciting, right? That launch, that setup phase. I always tell people, we always think that kind of that acquisition phase, it's so important, understanding your numbers and the underwriting and everything else. But once you buy that property, that's when the work really starts. And a lot of people don't understand that, especially in this game, that setup phase and getting through to that launch it can be difficult. It can be grinding. And having somebody that has gone through that, sometimes that's a few steps ahead of you, is always key, right? It's just having that community and the coaching. And I appreciate you saying that the reason I do it, like I said, if you would have asked me 5 or 6 or 7 years ago before I did Vodacy, I don't even know how long it's been now, that we've been doing it as far as coaching side, I would have laughed at you. I would have said, they're crazy. I'm like about the most introverted guy that I know, right? I want to live in the mountains somewhere and everybody leave me alone. But then you start doing it and you're like, I actually really like this. This is really fun. And so I appreciate you saying that. We have a lot of fun doing it. Well,
and I like that everything that you're around, you're pushing boundaries. And that's really what I've been trying to do recently in my life. Yeah. And being a part of Vodacy was pushing boundaries for me. Coming to the live event, I'm the guy that sits in the back corner, doesn't introduce myself, doesn't talk to anyone. And you know what? A good icebreaker for me, and I'll shout him out, was Mike.
Whitfield?
I want to say Whitman for some reason.
Whitfield.
Whitfield.
Yeah.
I ended up going to lunch with him on the first day, and he just broke me open, man. Like, he's just got this personality. He does, he just opens you up. Yeah. And I felt super comfortable in the group after that. And then I didn't realize that he was like a big deal. I just thought he was a dude.
Right, just a guy there, yeah. And those of you listening, Mike is one of our top designers he's one of the top designers in the country for designing short-term rental experiences. And he's part of our Vodacy expert advisor group. And he's exactly the opposite of us. He's about as extroverted as they come, and like totally just big personality, super knowledgeable guy. So that's awesome. Yeah. Sometimes we need that around us too.
Yeah. And I would have been super scared to even approach him.
Right.
And I think a kid he was with, I was asking Amy what she was doing for lunch, and you guys had prepared lunch for the people that were with Vodacy,
right?
Or the employees.
Yeah.
And so this kid kind of grabs me and he's like, "You looking for somewhere to go?" And I was like, "Yeah." And like, for me, that was super uncomfortable to be like, I'm in, And we walked down, sat with him, got to know Mike. Now he's helped us design our property.
Yeah.
Little plug for Mike. Every time I talk to that guy, he just puts a smile on your face. Yeah. But so it walked me through some of this. So if someone wants to get into a short term And for me, man, you give me a problem and I solve it. Right. So I always felt like if you gave me a property, I'll make it work.
Right.
And I think that's kind of one of the first things I learned is, dude, there's numbers to this. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yes.
And it's something I had to get over of like, no. If we do put a little more money down here, or if I can get these terms, if I can rent it for a little bit more, and you can't do that, in my opinion. I think that the numbers are what they are. And if the occupancy is not there, if the nightly rental is not there, it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. And you're exactly right. Like if you're thinking about getting into short-term rental investing, you really have to say, okay, am I going to take the time to understand this asset class as an actual asset class, as an investment vehicle? Because every investment vehicle has pros and cons, including short-term rentals. And every investment vehicle as an asset, they're going to have numbers that have to be run. There's going to be an underwriting process. There's going to be ways to maximize that asset. There's going to be things you have to do on the marketing side to stand out. Short-term rentals have a lot of that and on steroids, right? It's like, when you're running occupancy, nightly rate, seasonality, every one of those numbers changes on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Sometimes on a nightly basis. So it makes it difficult to underwrite them and difficult to understand it. It's not difficult in the fact that it's super complicated. It's difficult in the sense that a lot of people don't have access to that information on it very easily, right? And be able to compile it and put it together to tell us and paint this picture that this makes sense or not. You're a great example. There's markets that you were looking at thinking, hey, the Florida market, the Florida properties we were looking at, and you're saying the numbers, I really think I can go here. It's a popular market. There's tons of people coming down here. It's got to be able to make sense. It's got to work, right?
And I wanted that.
Yeah. And it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't. Your backyard down here in St. George, Utah is a vacation second home destination for a lot of people. But the acquisition price versus the revenue that's generated down here doesn't work a lot of times. Are there properties that work? Absolutely. Are there properties that don't work? Yeah, a lot of them. Right.
Yeah.
And so understanding that to say, okay, I'm going to kind of set my ego aside and say, even though, I'm this big time driver and I want to make this work and I'm going to do whatever I can to operate at the top of the market. Sometimes understanding the top of the market might not even work. Right. And so being able to make better investment decisions. And that was super important to me because I've lost everything before. I've gone into deals where I thought I knew what I was doing and I lost everything. And it's really, really painful to lose everything. And so it was important to me, if I was going to do this and I was going to get involved and help people with this game, I was going to make sure that they were going to walk into the game with their eyes wide open, conservative, and be able to say, okay, I'm going to understand this and this is going to work because of this. And a lot of it's just hard data that you're looking at, right? And it's just compiling it and letting it paint the picture.
Well, and I think what was a big help for me, so I'll kind of outline this a little bit. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. So you sign up for it and almost immediately you get the class.
Right.
And you get everything and it's you sitting there walking through, this is this. And you're breaking it down to every aspect, things I hadn't even thought of. Right. But it's very easy to understand. And so that's what I liked. I'm not a very smart guy. Yeah. Like I'll figure things out, but I'm not the brightest kid. But it was easy for me to understand and walk through. And then you get some of the tools. You get Air DNA that tells you, you type in an address and it pulls data and it tells you, here's your rental, here's your occupancy.
Right.
You can make numbers. So I started that, and my mistake to not continue through the class. Right. And so I took that, started plugging in all these markets and going nuts because 2 feet in. Right. And I quickly realized you need to be more conservative than that. And it needs to make more sense than that.
Right.
And so I kind of backed off. I was on one of the live calls. You guys do live calls. I swear It seems like almost every day.
Yeah, every day now. Yeah.
And I was on one of those calls and someone had mentioned that. And then they were like, well, the calculator that brings it down to 75%, 50%, 25%. And I was like, well, what's that?
Right.
And so I realized I had to backpedal a little bit, dive back into the class. And I think that's where the gold is in Vodacy. It's going through all that, having access to all you guys and having an accountability group and people doing it and people to bounce ideas is great. But having that class that you can go through, it's self-accountability to do that.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because and it's not that you were looking for the easy button. You were just saying, hey, I want to run faster than I want to run fast, and I'm only consuming this content as this fast, right? But I want to run faster than that. And I feel like, okay, I got this much content, and now I think I've got enough to go start making decisions. I remember us having some conversations when you were trying to find markets that worked, right? But we weren't really looking at all the information in the market, right? There's more than what we were seeing on some of that front end AirDNA stuff, right? And being able to extract different metrics and data points and nightly rate ranges and all that stuff. So it does become, it sounds complicated if you're diving into it, but it's really not, right? There's a process and a path that we've had laid out that's well traveled, right?
Yeah.
Our Vodacy portfolio is over 1,000 properties now.
Right.
We work with over 2,000 active investors across the country. So it's not like this is just kind of, okay, there's 3 or 4 people doing this. We know how to do it. One of the things for me as a coach that I'm always wrestling with is everybody is trying to make this process really simple, and simple sells, easy sells, right? And so as a coach, you got a lot of people out there that have been in the game for a really short period of time, riding a pretty, nice wave that we've had the last 2 or 3 years where everybody's making money, saying, okay, this is a really easy game. All you have to do is these 2 things and you're going to make money. And we want to believe that as an investor. We want to believe that when we dive into something, but the reality is that's not the case. And that's for me as a coach, that's always this battle that I'm having with kind of our marketing sales, saying, hey, we need to make this easier. People are coming in, and this is such an extensive program. When they get in, it feels overwhelming. We've tried to make it easy, but at the same time I don't know what to pull out, because there's layers that you have to have as you go through it. And I think you experienced that, right? You started, and then you realize you have to backtrack to go fill in those pieces.
Yeah. So for me, one of the big helps also was, let me back up to this. So when I was talking to Amy, she was telling me, I have this property, it's doing this kind of money. My acquisition cost was this. I had to, update some things. I think she put a sauna in. She's got like a lakefront property. And I was like, well, lakefront, where is this? And it's in one of the Carolinas, North Carolina.
Yeah, she's North Carolina.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so she's like, North Carolina. And I'm like, what? I'm like, how are you living here and you have a property in North Carolina?
Right.
Man, and that it was just an explosion in my brain of like, wait, I don't have to own something in St. George. And that for me, because I've always been taught that. Yeah. And like you had mentioned, finding something in St. George is not super easy to do because of acquisition costs is so high and rentals. I mean, rentals high, but not for acquisition costs. Yeah. And so anyway, it kind of opened me up. So I went straight home and told my wife, hey, I just talked to this lady. We had her on because she did the Ironman, but man, she's got me spinning on the short-term rental stuff. And I got on the podcast, listened to some of your podcasts, started researching you, signed up for Vodacy the next day. And it really opened me up to, I can own, and you guys sell it well too, like this, or not sell it well, you communicate it well. You're not just buying a rental, like you're buying an asset that you get to go use. Right.
It's a lifestyle asset.
Yeah. And so I told my wife, I'm not a traveler. Like I work every day. Yeah. I don't travel much. And doing little events like that. And like I'm in Arete too with Ed Milet and Andy Frisella, and I've got ticket to go to St. Louis. So like most of my traveling is stuff like that. Yeah. It's not like going on vacation.
Those guys are rock stars, by the way. Shout out to them.
I know, man. I'm so excited. I've never been to one of their lives, so I'm super stoked. But so went home and told my wife, hey, I'm part of this. If you could pick anywhere in the nation to buy a property that you could go stay in, 20% of the year, where would it be? And she's like, Florida. And so I was like, okay, we'll start looking in Florida. And we ended up in California. Right. But it just kind of opened my mind to, well, we can go anywhere. We don't have to stay local. Mm-hmm. And I think some people do. I mean, I know there's some people on the calls that they're, driving 2 hours away to their rental, and that's fine. I think we'll end up having one. So we're in St. George, Utah. I love Cedar Mountain, up Duck Creek, Bryan Head. We have an acre in Duck Creek now. Yeah. But I would love to have a cabin up there and do the same thing and just short-term rent it. Yeah. But even up there, it's hard acquisition to rental. So it would have to be something I'm using.
Right. It's and you now know how to recognize some of those markets and some of the opportunities in the markets, but also the challenges in the markets, and being able to balance that out to decide, am I actually going to acquire it, and why am I acquiring it here?
Do you think that, there's obviously enough education that you have to do to have an educated decision to do it. But do you think what's more important, having all that education or actually pulling the trigger to do it?
It has to do with both, right? There's a mix between both. You're never, ever going to have all the information that you need to make a full decision, right? If you want every piece of information, you're going to sit there and you're never going to pull the trigger. The Ed Milet talks about, and he says all the time, and I love when he talks about, he said that one of the biggest differences he sees in successful people versus people who are not as successful are the amount of information that successful people need before they pull the trigger is less than the person who thinks they need to have all the information and they never end up pulling the trigger. And so I do think there's a balance, but I love when he says that. So it's so important to be able to say, hey, I'm going to go jump in and I'm going to pull the trigger. I need to know certain things, but I don't need to know everything. And I love when he says that. And I mean, he's coached and is super successful himself. Yeah. And so when I hear him say that, it just resonates to say, you know, and he says it over and over. I hear him talk about it a lot on his interviews, is the amount of information a successful person needs before they make a decision and act is less than that average person that's not successful. And I think so do you need both? Yes. You know, can you just go take action in, you know, like Tony Robbins says, you can't run, if you're looking for the sunset, you can't be running east, right? Mm-hmm. You can take action, you run east all day long and you're never going to find the sunset. You have to have some information to head west, right?
Yeah.
And then take that action. But you don't have to know exactly everything before you make a decision.
Yeah, we may have went over our heads a little bit on our property. We went pretty big time. I mean, not big time. I mean, we went 2 houses. I thought it was a paint job. It's been a full remodel. Right. Like my 2 months of remodel paint job has turned into, I think, around 5 months now.
Yeah.
So we've just taken, it was a little more than I had signed up for, right? Mm-hmm. Which it usually is. Like we had talked before, you had told me this before I pulled the trigger. Hey, this is going to take more time. It's going to take more money. It's going to take more effort. I would say it takes more stress. Yes, it takes more stress than I thought. But for me, that's kind of just how I do things.
Right.
But that stress tolerance level for me had to grow. At the first of the year, my wife and I were talking goals, and she said, you know, I just hope this year's less stressful for us.
Right.
And I said, you know, I don't know if I want less stress, but I want a higher stress tolerance.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, it almost takes all of that to be able to do this though.
It does. And that's anything new, right? Like I was telling my son, I was talking to, he's 11 years old, and we were talking about, listen, our natural tendency is to, like how we were built millions of years ago. It's this fight or flight mentality, right? And we had to learn, like our natural tendency is to fly away from stress, is to hide from it, right? Because it was a survival mechanism.
Right.
But when you think about everything you've done in your life that was worth bragging about or talking about, there was this fear and this worry and this stress that you had to run toward, right? You had to say, okay, I'm gonna tackle this head on. And it wasn't easy, and it was challenging, and you had to walk toward that, and it was painful at times. But it also then you, on the other side of that worry and stress and challenges, that growth occurred, right? That's the only way we can grow. And so, now the next time that same thing happens, you're going to have maybe less stress for the exact same thing. But I promise you, when you continue to grow, that stress is going to be there, right? Because we haven't experienced it yet.
Yeah.
But on the other side of all that stress is usually growth. And we look back and say, man, was it worth it? And when you ask people that, it's a resounding yes. Like, yes, it was worth it, you know? And so, it's interesting with your wife and saying, I want less stress. It's sometimes you hear that and I think, but do you want to stop growing? Right. And so for us, you want to keep moving forward, and that growth is always going to be having that stress and those challenges in front of us.
Yeah, there's times she looks at me like I'm crazy. And that was definitely one of them.
Right. It's like, hey, let's.
She's like, all right, podcast host, get out of here.
Right. I don't need the motivational speaker in front of me right now.
Exactly. Tell me a little bit about your podcast. So you've been running it for a while. Amy told me about you, and then I Googled you, and that was my first platform for you. So talk about that. Where'd it come from? Why do you want to do it? Is it tied strictly to Vodacy? Is that the drive? Just let you run with it.
Yeah. So our podcast is called the Vacation Rental Revolution. And so, we talk strictly, and it is tied to Vodacy. I work with and just try to share everything we can. Like I've got a coaching program, but our coaching program and mentoring program, as you know, is not a cheap program. Right. We're one of the most expensive out there, most comprehensive, and we really take it serious when we dive in. We're working with real achievers. I always tell people we brag about our success stories. We brag about how many properties we have in the portfolio. We brag about how fast our members buy them. They do that not because like I love being a part of the journey with people, but I tell them our success is not because everything I have is earth shattering and so awesome for everybody. It's because we attract achievers and doers and people who take action, like they're action takers and they don't make excuses. They go make things happen. And so because that's what the business is, not everybody is there. Not everybody's saying, okay, I'm ready to really invest and commit to this process. And so we decided, hey, listen, I want to start putting free content out. I want to put different things that I don't know anything about podcasting. We just started talking in a mic one day and started putting content out, and we started posting it on YouTube and different things like that. But it became a really good resource on the front end for people that were really interested in understanding this game a little bit. And, I always tell people my goal is to have them walking into this game with their eyes wide open. So I talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of what this is like. I don't believe short-term rentals are the asset for everybody. It's not the end all be all investment. For us, it makes a ton of sense. For you, it makes a lot of sense, right? There's boxes that check off because we chose this as an asset that we're interested in. But you're never going to hear me talk bad about, like, I'm a real estate guy. It's what I understand, but there's a lot of things outside of real estate that I don't understand. I'm not going to talk bad about. Like, I'm not the guy that's on there saying, okay, short-term rentals are better than commercial properties, multifamily properties, long-term single family rentals. That's not it. I'm out there saying, hey, listen, here's what I know and do and love about short-term rentals. And there's pros and cons, and we talk about it. And it's been a real good resource that we've been able to put out, but it also really fuels and helps us grow Vodacy as well, because we're by invitation only. People have to come and talk to us and in person to make sure this is the right fit for them. And so it does turn into a pretty good marketing tool for us, frankly, as well.
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed, and I'm in a few different coaching programs, right? When that dollar amount comes across the table, regardless of what it is, whether it's RTA, whether it's you guys, I'm also in the real estate investing school. It's almost irrelevant to me. I've noticed the higher the dollar amount, the more tools and the more knowledge I'm getting, right? Like you guys are held accountable, and it's easy to prove that you know what you're doing because the results are there. Yeah. The properties are there. The retention, people are staying, people are communicating. Every call I've ever been on, there's more people than you would ever think, right? And it's like, I don't even know how you guys get to everyone.
Right.
and the way you guys structure that, I think, is really good. And then I'm also the next step up. So I'm in the, I just forgot what it's called. Yeah.
The inner circle.
The inner circle. Yeah. So I'm in the inner circle with you guys, which even gives me it's not, and I loved how you put it at the live event. You said it's not different information.
No.
Right. So I'm not trying to upsell you guys anything. Yeah. This isn't different information. You're not getting more privileges than anyone else, but this is a higher accountability group that's going to move faster. And these are the guys that put the pedal on the floor and a lot of them in it, since I was a few years after, a lot of them are already doing it. And so that's where I was like, hey, if I want to succeed fast, which it's kind of my speed, I was like, those are the people I want to be around.
Yeah. Power of proximity, right? So we want to surround ourselves with people that are doing more than what we're doing and exactly what we want to do, right? And then when we get there, hopefully we can pay it forward and be that kind of the mentor or somebody that shares that experience with somebody that isn't quite where we're at. But also, we're always searching for that next person and that next step to surround ourselves, because we want to take that next step up. And you're exactly right with coaching. I invest way over way over 6 figures a year, not 7 figures a year, but I put way over 6 figures a year in coaching and that's where we do it. It's not, we do it because we want the power of proximity, these masterminds, the information to, not have to go reinvent the wheel, And so for me, I've always been a real estate guy. I've never built a business, right? I hired coaches to help me build Vodacy and understand how to deliver and coach and make sure that we can fulfill what we're talking about doing. And, if I had to go figure that out on my own, it would have taken me a lot longer to hit the numbers that we hit with Vodacy without that coaching, because I've never run down that road. And so it's a lot, it's the return is, I'm the same. I don't look at the charge that comes across. I say, hey, what is the return on that investment? And it's usually pretty large when we invest in ourselves.
I was going to say, it's kind of cliche, but when you look at it and think, let's just throw so RTA is $5,000.
Yeah.
It's $5,000 a year. So you look at that $5,000 and you think, well, how much am I going to lose by not spending this $5,000?
Yeah.
And that was my mindset going into it. When I signed up, and Arte was the first one I did. When I signed up in Arte, I was like, man, I don't even know if I have $5,000 to put into this. And now I'm like, I can't afford to not be a part of this. And even with you guys and with all three that I'm a part of, I don't spend enough time being immersed into it as I should.
Right.
And I don't even know if it's a good thing that I'm in 3 different ones.
Right.
You know, because I'm running 4 or 5 businesses a day. I've got a 2-year-old. I do this every week. I was here till 10:30 last night recording an episode. So like I'm bouncing around, right? And some of those calls come through and I'm like, gosh, I still have 3 more hours of work.
Yeah.
So,
But that's why I always say, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. It'll get done. That's the beauty of that.
How did you get some of these guys that have come in, like Mike, like another guy that helped me was Jeff Chisholm, and I've even dropped a lot of questions to him since. How did you get these guys to come in? Did they just see the value and jump in? Did you seek them out? How'd that work?
Yeah, no, it kind of happens naturally and organically. Honestly, we don't. I never went out and really seeked out, but I'm an investor first and foremost, and so they're the professionals that I use. And then what they see is, holy crap, there's this community of real active investors, real action takers. And so that's really attractive to professionals, right? To expert advisors, because they're saying, okay, they have businesses to run as well. They offer services, whether it's photography, design, lending, tax, all these different things. And so they were the professionals that I was using in my business, and started saying, hey, listen, you guys do an amazing job. Whenever we work with somebody that's awesome, we want to share. We want to tell other people, hey, these guys are awesome. And so they've kind of organically become an expert advisor group that we've had within Vodacy that is, they're awesome. They've ended up growing their businesses to be some of the best in the nation in what they do, and some of the top experts and sought after experts at this stage in the game, that they only work with our Vodacy family. We're by invitation only. They're by appointment and association only.
Yeah. So I'm gonna shout out Jeff for a second. So Jeff helped me out. I reached out to him first off. So my big thing was I didn't know how the financing side worked.
Right.
I knew the standard stuff.
Yeah.
And he started bringing, hey, we can do 10% down on a second home. Hey, you can do a DSCR loan, which I'd never heard of before. And so he started bringing in these other options for me. And I thought, like, I think I friend requested him and then hit him up on Facebook. And within like minutes, I had a reply back. And I was like, oh, this is like a real dude, like he's out there really trying to help people. So I do want to shout out him. So I didn't want to mess it up. So I pulled it up. He just started a podcast, which is awesome. And I love it. And I do kind of a longer, episodes. My platform's a little longer. His are very short, which I love because I can just listen to it when I'm in the car from A to B. It's called the STR Home Financing Podcast with Jeff Chisholm, CHISUM. So, and he's been on yours a few times too.
Yeah, he's been on mine a few times. I'm actually next week going to be his first guest, he said, on his podcast. So he said, I'm like you. I get my episodes are usually a little bit longer. I've always done kind of hour-long episodes, and now I kind of mix in some short ones every once in a while. Not as often because I get more long-winded, but it's he said, hey, you got 10-minute episodes, so we got to cover. I'm like, how the hell am I going to do an interview in 10 minutes? But it was he's done a great job become really probably one of the nation's leading experts for second home, vacation home type lending on the traditional side with 10% down financing. I mean, he's done an amazing job with it.
Yeah. So can you explain that for a minute? And I actually had Jeff scheduled, and then I had something come up, and then schedules just haven't matched up. I need to reach out to him again. And another thing that hurts me as a podcast, I love the in-person stuff.
Right.
And so Zooms, I just don't love them as much. And so I'm a lot more likely to schedule an in-person thing than bring someone on with the Zoom.
Yeah.
Maybe we just need to get him out to Utah one of these times.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd love it out here. So,
go maybe talk about that 10%, because I think as far as short-term rentals, that's a huge key to it.
Yeah, it is a key. And in fact, I was just speaking to a group of real estate professionals, mortgage brokers, right before that's why we're down here. They had a little event that we went and spoke at, and I was talking to them about that as well. And somebody said, well, how often are people, in your group, in the Vodacy community, are they using investment type product loans, or are they using second home loans, vacation home loans, and 10% down products? And the answer was probably 75 to 80% of our investors buy their first couple with second home loans and 10% down financing. And they didn't think they were going to be able to when they joined and when they got in, because they assume they have to use these investment products that are higher interest rates, higher down payments. And that's not the case. In fact, Fannie and Freddie changed their guidelines a few years back. And a lot of mortgage brokers, even still to this day, don't understand that it's 100% legal to be able to buy a second home, short-term rent it out, use it as a short-term rental, and then have that personal use aspect as well. But it's a great product because you're getting very close to primary resident type rates and terms. And putting 10% down is very, a lot more doable for a lot of people than putting 25% down on a property. So you can grow your portfolio faster, nice terms, nice rates. Even though rates are going up, it's still going to be comparable to more primary resident financing, which is huge when you're building a portfolio.
Yeah. So when people ask me now, like, where should I start? I'm just trying to learn about this. I've been speaking in high schools, and I was speaking at a high school a month ago, and this girl says, I'm 17. But how do I start? I can't buy a house today, but I can when I'm 18 or whatever, whatever her limitation she put on herself. And I said, okay, let's just say you have 20% to go put on a house. Are you going to go do it today? And she was like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, are you ready to buy one right now? And she was like, oh, well, I guess I would go find a real estate agent and then I would find one. And I said, okay, well, how are you going to finance it? And so I was kind of walking her through this stuff. Well, how would you do? And so at the end of that little run through, I said, so what you need to be doing is learning all this. Yes. And I'm doing the same thing right now. I'm learning it too. I don't know everything. I'm very new into the real estate game. And so I told her, I'm like, you need to be stacking cash and you need to be learning about all this stuff. And for me, the biggest thing an unknown was I just thought 20, 25%. Who could ever afford 20, 25%, right? Yeah. And so when Jeff opened that idea up, I think on your podcast was the first time I heard the idea. Yeah. I was like, gosh, man, there's ways to get creative.
There is. And it's about everybody thinks they have to have all these resources in order to be successful. Money, I need money, and I need all these different things to be successful. You need to be resourceful. You need to understand what's available to you, how you can go make the resources that you have work. And if you don't have the resources, what are you going to do to go build those up? And a lot of times understanding the game you're going to dive into and learning that game and that knowledge that's a huge piece of the puzzle. I can't tell you how many times we have conversations with people that say, hey, yeah, I'm real interested in coaching and what you guys do, Shawn. I'll as soon as I'm ready to buy, I'll call you. And I'm just thinking in my head, that's such a backwards way to think. Why wouldn't you understand the game you're going to play before you ever buy anything, right? Yeah. Before you ever dive in. My kids are 11. I've got twins, boy-girl twins that are 11. And this year they were talking about all these things they wanted to buy. It's okay. What if I was going to partner with you on a purchase? My son was talking about buying a Mercedes Sprinter van and driving around, right? And he can't drive yet. He thinks they're cool, right? And so he's like, well, this would be so fun and everything else. Okay, I'll give you the option. What if I tell you have to save up a certain amount of the down payment and I'll partner with you for the rest. And I'll partner with you on a Mercedes Sprinter van, or I'll do the same deal and you can go buy a vacation home this year. And so the deal that I made with both of my kids is you have to save up 1% of the acquisition price. So they have to come up with 1%. Well, for an 11-year-old, that seems like a lot of money.
Sure.
The same as 10% seems like a lot for the 17-year-old, right? And so it's all kind of perspective. They're like, okay, well, we don't have $3,000 or $5,000 if we buy a $300,000 property or whatever. And I said, okay, that's fine. But what are you going to do if you want to go do that? Are you saying, okay, I don't have it, and so I can't do it? Or are you going to figure out a way to go get it and find a way to do it and then learn the game? So they both got super excited about the option to partner. One of the stipulations is they don't get allowances and they can't get jobs from us. They have to actually go earn the money from somebody else, not from mom and dad, right? And so that 1% they have to go out. And so they're both figuring out side hustles. They're both showing me business plans and trying to go out and like earn that 1%. But now they've got something they're interested in. They're actually going through the coursework in the masterclass that you've seen and learning the game. But also what's really interesting about learning the game you're going to get into before you have the resources is it gets you more excited about actually saving up for the resources and getting more resourceful to build up those resources. And so I see that with the kids. I see it with everybody I coach. There's nothing wrong with diving in and learning before you dive in. And actually, it's like, okay, I'll learn when I have the money. or once I understand, like if I save up my money, I'm going to do it. Well, if you don't have some reason why and learn the game you're going to play, a lot of times that money never gets saved up, right? There's something else that comes by, the next shiny object, and we decide, okay, that's what I'm going to spend my money on. And we never end up saving up our 1%, our 10%, our 3 or 5% for our first home. Like it applies to anything we're diving into. The money I need to start a new business, whatever it is, you have to get resourceful. And when you have a clear, like, okay, I'm going to learn what I'm going to do. And the more you learn about it, the more you get excited about it too. And then all of a sudden that savings starts to build up more and more.
So I tend to kind of shit on public school a little bit.
You and me both. My kids are homeschooled, so no offense taken. No, my kids have been homeschooled way before COVID, so they've been homeschooled forever.
So my thing this year, and I've mentioned it on here, and I already mentioned it, but is to speak in 12 classrooms. That's my goal this year.
Love it.
And part of that is because I shit on public schools.
Right.
And so I'm like, so what am I doing to try and help that other than just shitting on it? So that's kind of where it came from. But when I'm in those classes, every one of them I've said, like, I was that kid sitting here thinking, I'm never going to use this. You know, and I'm like, how many of you guys think that? And most people raise their hand. And then I'm like, but here's the thing, guys, you're not here to learn these theorems that you're never going to go through again.
Right.
What you're doing is putting together this ability and the skill set to problem solve.
Right.
And I was never, if I was told that when I was in high school, I'd have taken high school a lot more serious.
Yeah.
Because that's what your whole life is going to be, is these, whether it's problems that you're not predicting and it happens, or it's things you're trying to grow with. You need to be able to be resourceful, like you said. You need to be able to do those things to acquire the confidence, to acquire the ability to take risk, to acquire all that. And I think that's a lot of what, sure, like times tables, whatever. I got a calculator in my pocket, all that stuff, right? But like, I think that's really what kids should be taking from school.
Yeah, I mean, it's if they're just monetarily, if a kid thinks, okay, think about the richest people in the world, they're rich because they're the best problem solvers in the world. When you can go and find and solve other people's problems, you can make a lot of money. And so, yeah, if you take it and say, okay, I'm here to learn how to deal with stress and find solutions to problems, and then all of a sudden I can take that and apply it to all different areas of life, you're never going to be hurting for money. You're always going to be somebody that people want to be around because you can look that challenge in the eye, not get overly stressed, and actually say, I'm going to solve the problem. It was interesting. My wife was telling me that she heard that if they take these groups of kids and out in the wilderness, and they say, okay, you guys are going to be out here. You've got this problem that you have to have solved, and you have to build a shelter, and you have to make sure that you can survive out here by yourself. They leave them, and they said almost always the stereotypical problem kid in the school, the kid that is the troublemaker, almost always takes the leadership role and makes sure that everybody is going to be has a task, and they're building toward actually survival out in the wilderness. And she's like, that's interesting. And she said, and I said, well, it makes sense to me because they don't get stressed. They're in stressful situations a lot. A lot of times those kids are typically in stressful situations, and they're able to actually deal with it. They don't run from it, right? They're okay with that. And so I'm sure there's a lot of different reasons. I don't even know the study that happened, but when she told me that, I just immediately thought they're the kids that know how to solve problems because they're typically in stressful situations on a regular basis, dealing with challenges. Some of them they bring on themselves, but they're used to dealing with challenges.
Yeah, it's back to stress tolerance, right?
Yeah, right.
And that was something that was introduced to me recently. Someone had said that, stress tolerance, and I'm like, man, I think I'm addicted to stress. I'm addicted to work. Definitely, that's definitely an addiction for me. But part of it is being stressed. Like I'm always just pushing the brick wall. I'm always trying to push boundaries. And something I've tried to transition recently is putting that stress into growth, not just making a dollar amount.
Right.
And hence the podcast, hence speaking in high schools, getting coaching things, all of that was to push my boundaries. And Amanda and I, my wife and I, were at the point financially where like we could coast.
Yeah.
Realistically, she could cover all of our expenses. I wouldn't even have to work. And so that was part of it. Like I had to get to that point. I'm not saying like if you're paycheck to paycheck, you should go try and buy a house. Right. Like I'm not saying that. But yeah, I think that at some point you guys, need to start pushing boundaries. And if you're not at that point, figure out what you got to do to get to that point.
Yeah. And I think that like when you say you're kind of addicted to stress, I would ask, are you really addicted to stress or are you addicted to growth?
Yeah.
And that's more what I would assume you're more addicted to. It's like, I like pushing it. I like growing. And I know if I'm not stressed and I'm not challenging myself, I'm not growing. Right. And that's, so because I'm right there with you. I feel like like people are like, just slow down. Like you're good. Like, and it's like, that's just not, don't want to slow down. I want to grow. I want to see other people grow around me. I want to challenge the status quo and that comfort level that not only I have, but I also want other people to say, well, I mean, if he's doing it, I can do it too. Right. And so I feel like the stress comes with growth. And so maybe you're addicted to stress, but I would guess you're addicted more to growth based on just knowing everything you're doing.
You're right. I think they're just related.
Right. Absolutely.
So you're right. It's just a different word that it walks the same line. But when's the last time you had a 9-to-5 job?
I had a 9-to-5 job right out of college. Okay. So that was 23 years ago.
Oh, and we failed to mention that you were D1 basketball player.
We're right in the middle of March Madness and we forgot that, Derek. Come on, my man.
That's totally my mistake.
That's like, those are glory days. We should have brought that up right in the beginning.
You and Dame time, right? Dude. No one knew, dude.
Nobody knew. Yeah,
so Shawn was a big-time basketball player at Weber, right?
Yeah. The last NCAA tournament win that the Big Sky's gotten. So that's been a minute for our conference and Weber State, yeah.
And you played with Damian Lillard.
He's he's younger than me. Okay. Yeah, he's definitely younger than me. I know Damian.
I knew you guys knew each other.
Yeah, and so a great kid, and so excited to see him succeeding the way he is. I mean, just what a heck of a player. But he makes us old guys feel really good. He comes back in town and makes us all feel like we were actually at his level at one point, which we weren't. But
we all played together. Yeah, we played the same place, walked the same halls.
We played on the same court, right? So, he's nice enough to make us feel great about ourselves. But what a heck of a player, and so excited to see him succeed like he has.
Yeah, the reason I asked that is because I think that we're similar with the 9-to-5 jobs. Is it's hard to have an employee that's always pushing boundaries, and So I was that employee. I spoke my mind. I told people what I thought. Whether I was right or not, I assumed I was.
Right.
So I always pushed that boundaries, and I had a lot of bosses push back.
Right.
I had one boss at an auto parts store when I was a kid that we clicked. He got it. He loved it. He wrote it. He put me in charge of things. He gave me the responsibility.
Yeah.
Then I had a postmaster who I still own the mail contracts in Hurricane. He's kind of in and out now, but for years he was the postmaster then. And he was the same way. We just clicked. He just let me run. He's like, okay, Derek's going to be this guy. I'll let him be this guy. It'll be ultra productive. But yeah, I think we're kind of similar in that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a job and I was more the walk the line type of a kid. I was like your prototypical, like I was, always an athlete, played, like we mentioned, college basketball. As soon as I graduated college, but I had straight A's, I was valedictorian. I had all these things that I was like, I was just kind of I followed all the rules, but I was always really driven to something more. And I got a job right out of college as a sales rep, really quickly progressed up in that company as well, and had some opportunities to move. And that lasted about a year. The problem with it is I was always interested in more, and I was always going to Barnes and Noble. Back in those days, there wasn't like you weren't listening to audiobooks. You had to go into the bookstore and you were buying your books. And I always loved real estate. And I met this guy that was doing a real estate conference in Denver at the time. I moved to Denver. I was working in Denver, and I show up at the conference, and this asshole flies in a helicopter. And I'm like, okay. The problem with me with that is like, okay, I'm not going to be there anytime soon with my job. And so I need to figure out what he's doing. His name's Peter Conti, and David Finkel put on this conference. And at the time it was about lease options. I actually just went and did what he said in a weekend and wholesaled a deal for like $19,000. At the time, my salary was $31,000. And I was like, holy crap, okay, now I can see why I can buy a helicopter, right? And so I'm like, if I do this so many times, I can do this. So literally, that's when I walked in and quit, and they were just shocked. They're like, you're like our star, employee, and everything's perfect, and you're going up in the company and doing all these different things. But I knew that there was this cap, right? There was going to be a cap of what I was going to be able to do there. And over here didn't seem like a cap. And so I was like, okay, I'm out. And so it wasn't that I necessarily had challenges with the bosses I had. I only had one. He was great. And still actually know him today. Still know Peter Conti today, because he's in the coaching space and has been for a while. And so it's interesting. We rewound it, and I told him that story, that he was really why I got into this. Cause, a couple years ago when I started Odyssey and we started making a name for ourselves, he reached out and didn't know that story at all. Yeah. And reached out for us and said, "Hey, would you come on our platform?" He was doing a big conference and wanted us to come speak on short-term rentals. And we went there, and I told him, "Yeah, I'd love to." And by the way, just so you know, you were a big part of me getting into real estate. I told him the story. He just about died, so it was really fun to. So for me, yeah, it's just always wanting that next step, right? Saying, okay, there's more out there, right? And so, and it's hard to do that. You can be a great employee, and there's times where you can say, okay, I'm going to take that active income and I'm going to do whatever I can to put it into building my own thing, whether that's your own business, whether that's your own portfolio. But there's more that you can always do more. There's not one of us here, anybody listening, you and I together, we can always do more. And I've always been that, like, attracted to more. And so whether that's more impact, whether that's more stuff at times, especially when I was younger, I wanted more stuff, right? And I had to figure out and be resourceful and figure out what and how I was going to be able to do that. Real estate was a great vehicle for me, just because, and it really became because, if Peter would have rolled up in his car and I didn't see the helicopter, I don't know if I'd be here today. but I was like, okay, I can't get a helicopter doing what I'm doing, so I need to do something else. And that's what got me into it.
How does your relationship with your wife, how's your marriage work through all this? That's a thing I'm always curious of. I don't know that there is a balance. I know there has to be support.
Yeah.
So walk me through that.
Yeah. So Teresa and I have been, and this is a kind of a fun fact. So Teresa and I, we've been together since we were 15. Teresa's the only girl I've ever kissed, my wife. And so I've never even kissed another girl in my whole life. So she has been kind of ride or die with me the whole time. We built a lot of businesses together in the beginning. She was a huge part of the beginning stages of our career. We were just going hand in hand. She was a big part of the real estate investing. She was there right there when I quit my job, and she was like, heck yeah, let's do it. Right. Let's do this. And she would be there through our whole fix and flip business. So she's been and seen firsthand the business side of it. Right. And she was built that way as well. And when Teresa and I, we struggled to have kids for a while. It took us about 8 years to have our twins, and ended up going through in vitro and everything else. And I always tell people, like, at the time, I had lost everything in 2009, not because of real estate, actually. There was a big resort we were working on that got shut down. The feds came in, locked up laptops, locked up file cabinets, and the owners of the resort got indicted on security charges. And it shut down overnight. And we weren't necessarily working for them, but we were working directly with that resort. It was one development that we were working on, a high-end resort community, private ski and golf resort, like $25, $30 million homes. And all of a sudden it shut down overnight, and we were making really good money at the time, over 7 figures a year. And so we sat down and we lost everything. And I sat around and played the victim. Frankly, it wasn't because it got shut down. It's because I was an idiot with my money. I didn't put anything away. I spent it as fast as I was making. I was buying all kinds of stuff, right? We would go to, I remember we went to Fashion Week in New York at the time, and during one of the fashion weeks during that time. And we walked out there with like $160,000 clothes bill.
Wow.
And so, like, on stupid stuff. So now, I say that because we've all gone, whether you're spending $160,000 on clothes or whether you're spending whatever on whatever it is, there are times where you might not be spending, your money the right way. And especially when I was young, I just was buying stuff because I could. Yeah. And then when it shut down, you don't think it's ever going to shut down. And when it shut down, it shut down overnight, and I sat there it took me about 6 months to lose everything, because I just blamed everybody and everything and was mad at the world at the time, lost everything. And, Teresa and I, when you're losing everything, I mean, those are stressful times too, right? And we started building everything back up. We went through that together, started building that back up. Like when you mentioned, when you said that when you first started Arate, you're like, I don't even know if I had $5,000, right? My first coach that I ever hired outside of Peter, when we started doing our investment stuff and we lost everything, I had to figure out how to sell real estate. And I tried to hire this guy named Craig Proctor. I went to a real estate conference. At that conference, Teresa and I, we didn't have any money, and we would literally walk up and down the hotel room, the lobbies, and look for, because you know how everybody sets their room service out on in the hallway. They don't eat it all. And so we were literally, that's how we were eating while we were at the conference. I mean, that's how little money we had, but how important I felt like being at a conference around people that knew what they were doing was to me. And we ended up, in fact, they tell the story because we've been on their stages a number of times, because we became a really good success story for them, and they helped us really grow from zero to really good again in a year or so. And they tell the story, like Lester, the guy that was signing me up, he's kind of like Amy was for you in this. And he said, "Hey, I'm excited to work for you." And he said, Shawn shook my hand, and I literally thought my hand was going to fall off. And he said, "This has to work." And that's all I said to him. And he said, I could tell in his eyes that there's something like, this is their last straw. Their back's against the wall. And I tell people, like, when you go through that with, your significant other, your wife, when you go through the good times and then you go through the bad times, you start to, it's not like we're always, hey, you're my favorite person to be around every single day. There's times where we're like, hey, I'm on her nerves and she's on my nerves.
Need some space.
Yeah. But we've been through a lot together. And then we ended up when, at the time we were struggling to have kids and finally started making money again. And it was, the bill for in vitro that we were going to at the time, we had to do this really special procedure called ICSI. And it was like $150,000 check that we had to write. And embarrassingly, and you've heard me tell the story, but I was saying, hey, I don't know that this is in the cards for us. I was going to say, no, I'm not going to do this. And she was there and just said, hey, no, this is what we're going to do. And everything's going to be okay. And I was prepared to fight it. I was prepared to not do it. And she said, I just have a good feeling that this is what we need to do in our lives. And when somebody's like that, you just say, okay, let's roll with it. Right. And so we ended up having kids, changed our lives. We ended up having twins. And then everything kind of perspective changed. But for Teresa and I, there's a lot that we've gone through together, and I can't imagine running down the road with anybody. Again, we're both kind of cut from similar cloths, but now we're different. In fact, when we were going to have the kids, we were making plans for full-time in-house nannies, and they were going to basically kind of raise the kids while we were doing the work and the business. As soon as she got pregnant, she said, hey, listen, I don't think I want to work anymore. And luckily we've been in a position that she doesn't have to work. And
You're like,
so,
damn it, I knew this was gonna happen.
Right. I'm like, hey, well, there goes half the production, or more. And so, but so she's, as much as like she was the high heel wearing, girl in New York and hustling as hard as I was. And then immediately just changed overnight. And so now she's the, stay-at-home mom, homeschooling mom, and couldn't have more fun doing it. And so it's been a wild ride, but a long ride. And I think the ups and downs just make you that much stronger. And we have more fun every single day. It's been a really fun ride.
Yeah. I just kudos to you guys, man, because that's a lot to go through and stay together. I feel like my wife was put on this earth to have to deal with me,
right,
or be married to me. Right. And the other day I was just thinking about her and everything I'm trying to do and the stress I'm putting on us intentionally to try and grow.
Right.
And it might've been yesterday. It was a day or two ago. I texted her and just said, hey, thanks for loving me for who I am.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of it. She's never tried to change me. She's never tried to steer me a different way. Like I can do and be and take the risks and take the time out to do podcasts and speak to schools. Like I can do all that because she's busting her butt too at her job. Right. So like I always try to give her kudos, man. Like this isn't possible without her.
It's not. Yeah. And it's good to know that. And it's not like every single day like you get on her nerves, she's going to get on your nerves. Like I always tell people, like there's good and bad throughout every relationship, but when you find that person that you can run down that road with, it's a pretty fun road to run down.
Yeah. So this whole thing for me, short-term rentals, Vodacy, real estate, I've always thought I'd build a business. I'd make it successful. I would bring my kid up in the business. So I have a 2-year-old. I'd bring him up in the business and he'd take it over. And then we just kill it, father and son, right? Like that's been my whole thought. And, and it hit me one day of like, what if he doesn't want to do that, you know? And so that's kind of where a lot of my stuff started shifting from. And I had read Cash Flow Quadrant with Robert Kiyosaki. And it made me think like, man, I've been self-employed forever. And I've just recently started being a business owner. But what I really need and want to do is be an investor.
Right.
And he talks a lot about that. If you haven't read the book, go read it. I've read it 3 times in maybe 6 months. Because I'm trying, that's where I'm at in life. And so I'm trying to dig as much as I can out of that book. But anyway, so the switch to investor that I'm trying to make more is my goal now is generational wealth.
Right.
That's what I'm going towards. I don't like to travel, but I think that our goal, I say I don't like to travel, but because I'm going to explain, I think I'm starting to switch that dial. I think what Amanda and I would like to do is start building this rental portfolio to where, 20 years from now, right, that we're going to have properties that we'll just go to 2 or 3 months at a time.
Right.
And we may not have like a primary residence, right? And we just kind of bounce around. And like, I would love that. And the property we have now, whether we have that one or not, I don't know. Like if it's a stepping stone to get into something else, And I told her, I was like, well, so we go get Montana and we're there in the summer, and then we go get Florida and we're there in the winter. And I really think that's what we're going to try and end up doing. But on the flip side of that, for what it's going to do for William is, dude, if you want to take the business over, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
If you want to go to school, knock yourself out. If you want to be a marine biologist, like, I don't care, man. I just want you to be good at what you want to do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to force you into anything. That was one thing my parents did really well. So I have 3 older brothers, little sister, and everyone's like, man, you guys are all so different. Right. And I'm like, it's because we were never pressured into anything. Right. Our parents let us be who we are. Right. For better or for worse, I don't know. Yeah. Right. But I mean, we all grew up with the same parents, same house, went through some of the same struggles. We're all so different. Yeah. And I'm like, it's because our parents let us free think. Yeah. They let us figure it out. They let us problem solve. They let us do all that. Talk a little bit, if you can, and then we can wrap this up, about your kids. What benefits they're going to get from this, even though you've already touched on that. Yeah. I love talking about people's families because it's a whole different conversation. When you start talking about your wife, man, you're sitting straighter, you're smiling more. So talk about your kids for a minute. Yeah, that's awesome. And it's so funny when you mention like why we want to do it, right? When I had kids, I started to ask a lot of different questions. And I think sometimes I was saying, okay, I'm asking those questions because of the kids, because of the generational wealth, the legacy I want to build, and all those different things. And I want them to have that, right? The more they grow up and the older that I get, the more I want them to, I had the conversation with them about buying their properties. So what if you don't get any of the properties? What if the business is gone? What if none of my properties are around for you and you have to go build your own? Like, what would you build? If you could build anything and you could figure it out, what do you guys want to do? My son always, I'm always trying to tell him, hey, listen, you don't have to play basketball because I played basketball, right? And he loves playing basketball, football, and everything else, but I think he likes football better. And I'm trying to say it's okay to like football better, right? My daughter is huge into like the ballet scene. I don't know nothing about ballet. Teresa knows nothing about ballet. We're going to London next week, a week from tomorrow. We're going to London for 3 weeks because she got into the #1 ballet school in the world, the Royal Ballet. There's 25 kids a year in the world that get in there. And so, they're able to chase their dreams, and that's more important to me than anything else. And like you said, and they're so different. They're going to run down different roads. You want to put and present opportunities in front of them that they have to work for, though, right? I don't want to just have my kids say, okay, because originally I said, hey, listen, I grew up maybe not as well off as other people. We lived in a fairly poor area. I had great parents. I mean, it's not like we were starving,
but I was in a lower income area, those types of that, growing up in that type of an environment. And I said, I don't want my kids to do that. I wanted to be and live in nicer areas, not have to worry about some of the things that I worried about growing up. But then when you take that away, you start to say, okay, is it important for them to kind of build that themselves? And that's kind of the road I'm running down now with them, as they're getting a little bit older. They're still young. They're still 11. And I don't want to stress them out with anything, but I want them to believe that they can do anything they want. But just because they want to do it, if they choose to do it, they're going to put the work in to make it happen, right? And so investing in properties, most 11-year-olds aren't going to have the opportunity to do that. And they're not going to have dad to partner with, right? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But coming up with that down payment, running the numbers, they have to present to me like our property reviews, right? They come and show me that. And I'm looking, I kind of set it up like the Shark Tank in our house, right? Like I'm the shark, right? So they have to do presentations, right? So I'm trying to teach them those life skills of being able to solve problems, understand deals, present to somebody that you might need a partner on, or you might need to get money from, or somebody to invest in you. And so teaching them those things are so much funner now, and seeing that happen. When they were really little and we just had them, I just thought, I just need to build it to give it to them. Yeah, right. And same, I want to have it for them so that they walk into this. The more that I see what's going on in the world, the more it scares me to death that when I'm gone, if I do that, the problems they're going to have. And so I want them to say now, how do they become problem solvers? How do they do this? Sure. Do they have some advantages and some things that I didn't have? For sure. Then that's okay. I want that for them, right? That's partly why we work so hard. But I also want to say, at the end of the day, if I'm gone, because I don't know how long I'm going to be here, right? I mean, you've had your dad that wasn't here for, as long as he probably, everybody was thinking he'd be here. We don't know what tomorrow looks like. And one of the things that I like, Wyatt 2 days ago came to me and said, Dad, if I gave you $1 million, would you take it? And how would you feel? And I said, that'd be awesome. It'd be feel like I won the lottery. He said, yeah, okay, what if I gave you $10 million? How would you feel? And would you take it? And I said, well, yeah, I mean, he said, no, I'm just giving, I'm rich. I'm going to give you $10 million. And he said, okay, what if I said you'd love that 10 million and it would be life-changing and it'd be great, everything you had. And this is an 11-year-old telling me this. He heard it from somebody. He couldn't remember who, so I can't give credit to where it came from. He was listening to probably a podcast or something, but I don't know where it came from, but I thought it was a great question. And he said, okay, what if I gave you $10 million, but you were going to be dead in a day? Would you take it? Would you take the 10 million, give it to your family, give it to whoever, use it for whatever, knowing that if you take that $10 million, you're gone the next day. You have 1 day left. And I said, no, I wouldn't do that. And he said, then why do we waste the days that we have? And I thought, wow, because we all think, okay, money's going to change everything. I'll take the 10 million. He said, if every day is worth $10 million, Dad, then we can't waste the days every single day. We got to treat it like it's $10 million.
Love
so
it,
it's
man.
Great. And he didn't come up with it, but it resonated with him. And those are the things that you want your kids to start to think about and realize. And so for me, it's a long road, right? We're not perfect parents, never will be. We just want to live a life that they feel like they can chase their dreams and be an example enough to say, okay, listen, it's going to be hard. It's going to take longer than you think. It's going to cost more money. It's going to be more stressful, but is it worth it to run down the road? And if the answer to my kid is saying, yeah, I'm willing to look that stress and those challenges in the eye and run toward them, to me, that's a win. And that's now more important than me saying, okay, I want to build all this to leave it to them. And so it's interesting as it's shifted for me recently, especially.
Yeah. The generational part is what got me. I was like, so if I build a business and my son takes it over and it makes enough money that it supports him and then it's gone, is that generational wealth? Yeah. And I was like, well, to me, it's not. Like, I need to put resistance in front of him that he's going to be able to grow, and I can teach him the lessons to teach his kid, to teach his, like, that's the generational part, right?
Exactly.
And so that's what made me think, okay, I need something else that I can teach him that he can walk into.
And generational wealth, exactly what you're saying, it's not the monetary wealth, it's that knowledge of understanding how to continue and keep it going and continue to pass that down to the next generation.
Dude, I love it. I don't want to take a ton of your time because are you guys driving home tonight?
Yeah, we're gonna hit the road. Yeah.
So let's wrap this up. Anything else you want to touch on? Any Vodacy plugs? What do you want? Anything you want to do with that?
No. This has been awesome. I love having these conversations, Derek. I sure appreciate you having me. Yeah. This if anybody wants to go check out short-term rental stuff, just go to vodacy.com, VODYSSEY. Grab a copy of our book. Check out our podcast, YouTube channel. But yeah, I mean, more than anything, I love having these conversations. It's really fun to see your journey and what's going on. I mean, being able to share that journey with other people. I mean, the people listening, we know how valuable your time is. It's the most valuable thing you have. Always appreciate them sharing it with us.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Appreciate you guys making this happen. My main man, Dave, got a shout out, Dave.
Yeah. Dave's, they put it all together.
Is he just your best friend or how's that come about?
Dave's been my best friend Dave played basketball at St. Mary's.
Okay.
So we've kind of known each other from the basketball world a little bit. Dave was always kind of my idol. We grew up in the same area and Dave was like the basketball star in the area I grew up, but I'm a couple years younger than Dave. And so he's getting really old. And so but I always used to try to like have Dave notice me. Never knew who the heck I was growing up, but he was always kind of my idol. And we were able to meet, 20 years ago, started playing basketball after we were done with college and just became really great friends. Now he runs our business development side of Vodacy, partners with me in Vodacy and partnered on a number of houses. We've got a couple houses together. And so we're having a fun time together.
Yes. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for keeping me on your mind. And when you guys are in St. George to line this up, appreciate it.
Heck yeah.
All right, guys, that's episode 90. This is Shawn Moore. If you want to know anything about him, the podcast is an easy way to get information from him. It's free. If you're the guy that doesn't think you need the coaching yet, which you're wrong, you can at least go hit the podcast and go through that. Anyway, thanks for being here if you're still with us, and we'll see you guys next week.